this video, I'm going to share with you how to play Dune War for Arrakis, the 2024 two-player asymmetric board game designed by Maggi and Francesco Nepitello and published by Cool Mini or Not. My name is Chris Bates with Pro Se Gaming, and we are very excited to share this amazing game. Let's start with how to win the game. In a two-player game of Dune, one player plays as House Atreides with Fremen allies. The other player plays as House Harkonnen with House Carino allies. House Harkonnen wins the game by gaining 10 supremacy points. House Atreides wins the game by reaching or exceeding a specific score on each of 3 types of prescience points indicated on a secret objective card drawn at the beginning of the game. On screen right now is an example of a secret objective card. That card has the text title, "He shall know your ways as though born to them," and requires the Atreides player to have 9 on the green track, also known as a Kwisatz Haderach track, 6 on the orange track, also known as the Sand Dwellers track, and finally 4 on the red track, also called the Jihad track. There are 6 different secret objective cards, all with a variable combination score of these 3 types of markers for the Atreides to try to win the game. Note that House Harkonnen wins immediately when they gain their 10th supremacy point, while House Atreides only wins the game at the end of a round if they have achieved their secret objective. House Harkonnen obtains supremacy points by destroying sieges throughout the game. Sieges are types of settlements controlled by the Atreides player. Each siege will have a random rank value between 1 to 3. That rank corresponds with the number of supremacy points the Harkonnen player receives for destroying the siege. For example, if the Harkonnen player destroys a rank 2 siege, they will move the supremacy track up 2 spaces. House Atreides advances their prescience score mainly through interacting with prescience cards. 3 prescience cards will be revealed each turn that give a variable amount of prescience points once completed. The Atreides player may score up to 2 of the 3 cards each round. There will also be 6 ecological testing stations, each of which, if the Atreides player is able to conquer them, raises a random prescience score by 1. Finally, if the Atreides player is able to destroy any of the Harkonnen settlements, they will be able to raise each prescience marker by the rank of that destroyed settlement. The Harkonnen supremacy track also indicates when Thufir Hawat and Fade Ratha, 2 Harkonnen name leaders, interplay, as well as when the Atreides player receives Bene Gesserit tokens, which we will discuss later. The Atreides track indicates when Paul Muad'Dib, Reverend Mother Jessica, Chani, and Aliyah interplay, as well as family atomics, which we'll also discuss later. The action phase really is the meat of the game, and while it isn't the first thing you do in the game round, it is the most substantial. So we will start our learn to play talking about actions and the action phase. At the start of the action phase, each player rolls their action dice. Harkonnens have 8 action dice, but some of them may be affected by the Spice Must Flow board, which we'll discuss later. Atreides roll 4 action dice. After rolling, the dice are placed on their symbol spot of each player dashboard. Harkonnen have spaces for 3 dice showing the same symbol, while Atreides have 2 spaces for each symbol. If more symbols are rolled than there are spaces to place, each die exceeding the maximum must be changed to another available result, starting with those with the most free slots. So for example, if the Harkonnen rolls and they have 4 strategy but can only place 3, the 4th die can either be placed on Mentat or House, since those spots both have 0 dice rolled in this example. After that placement process is completed, the Harkonnen player may choose 1 Bene Gesserit token if they have one available. Then Atreides has the same choice. Bene Gesserit tokens act as extra die for that round and are discarded after use. There are 6 types of actions available with minor differences between House Harkonnen and Atreides, and 1 action available only to the Atreides player. We will only be discussing the generic actions. Name leaders can also change the resolution of action dice. Harkonnen and Atreides both have access to a deployment action, but they work different for each faction. Harkonnen deployment allows them to deploy 3 regular and 1 leader unit, generic or named, across 1 or more settlements of their choice. Regular units, shown here, have a circle base. There are a variety of different sculptures for the models, but bases denote the type of unit. Leaders are all a different color plastic than the base units, but Shire Leader is shown here, the generic Harkonnen leader. Harkonnen starts the game with 6 settlements, specifically 4 villages, Carthag and Arrakis, where they could deploy. Atreides deployment action allows Atreides to deploy 1 deployment token and 1 leader, either generic, a naib, or named into the same siege. Sieges are Atreides settlements, and they begin the game with 8 on the board. The tokens can denote a variable combination of regular, elite, or special elite units. A circle represents a regular unit, a square represents an elite unit, and a hex represents a special elite unit, which for the Atreides are called Fedaykin. The Atreides have 8 deployment tokens that will be drawn from a bag randomly when the deployment action is taken. The tokens are finite, so once they are used, they should be removed from the game. Deployment tokens are placed face down and hidden information until revealed by the Atreides player or revealed by attack or scout action, which we will discuss later. Note that leaders, either generic or named, are not considered units and can only be placed on the board with friendly units. If they are ever in an area without a friendly unit, the leaders are eliminated. There is a limit of 6 units in any one board space. Again, leaders are not units, so they do not count against that stacking limit. The next action we will discuss is the house action. Both players have access to the house action, but again, they act differently for each faction. The Harkonnen house action allows replacement of 2 regular units, round bases, with 2 elite units, square bases, or allows for placement of 2 vehicles onto the board. The Harkonnen are the only player that has access to vehicles in the base game. There are 3 types of vehicles in the game: harvesters, ornithopters, and carryalls. We will discuss vehicles more during the movement and spice harvesting phase. It's important to note deploy in the game terms means to take a game piece currently not on the board, except from the regeneration tank, and place them on the board. Place has a different meaning in the game, and that means take a game piece from wherever it is, except for the regeneration tank, and place them on the board. If they are already on the board, they can be relocated as if they were entering for the first time. Let's talk about the Atreides house action next. It can be used as any action die result of the player's choice, so it can copy any other action to give the Atreides unparalleled flexibility. The next action is called the Mentat action, which again is available to both players and acts as the same for both players. Resolving a Mentat action allows a player to draw 2 planning cards from their planning deck into their hand. The player can either draw 2 from the same planning deck or 1 from each deck. You have to choose if you are taking 2 from one deck or 1 from each deck before starting to resolve the draw. We will next talk about the strategy action and a leadership action at the same time, since they are similar in how you will be moving and attacking in Dune. Both actions resolve the same for the Harkonnen and Atreides players. The strategy action allows a player to move 2 different legions or attack with 1 legion, while the leadership action allows a player to move 2 different legions with a leader or make a surprise attack with a legion that contains a leader. Remember, leaders are either generic or named, and they are different colored plastic that don't count as units. Let's break down all the parts of both actions, which requires us to learn what moving and attacking is like in the game. To learn movement, let's start with what the game board looks like. Here you can see the board, which shows a view of the northern hemisphere of the planet Arrakis, also known as Dune. You can see a series of dotted lines that separate the board into 8 sectors. You can see circles connecting various sectors. Those are called air zones and used by the Harkonnen vehicles. The 4 sectors adjacent to the North Pole are called the central sectors, while the other 4 are called the outer sectors. The sectors are further divided into areas. There are 4 different types of areas: mountain, plateaus, minor erg, and desert. You can see the North Pole is a mountain area, as well as all this dark gray area. Plateaus are any area that have this brown outcropping graphic. Minor erg are this light tan area, and desert are the rest of the orangish spots on the board. Any desert area adjacent to the edge of the board is considered deep desert, which has other game effects associated with it. If the border between 2 or more areas is represented by a thick red line, it is considered impassable and not considered adjacent for ground movement. Note that some rules and planning cards may refer to a free or empty area. An area is free when it doesn't contain enemy settlements, enemy units, or sandworms. An empty area is an area of the board that contains nothing, neither figures nor tokens of any kind. An area containing only an ecological station or a harvester is considered free for all players. Now that we know what the game board looks like, we can talk about moving. To move a legion means to take a legion from an area it occupies to an adjacent free area, so a space containing no enemy settlements, units, or sandworms. Remember, you can use a move action to move into spaces containing harvesters, and if an Atreides player does so, those harvesters would be destroyed. A legion is defined as all units and leaders within the same area. A legion could comprise as few as 1 unit to as many as 6 units and any number of leaders. Again, remember, leaders can never be in the area with no units, and they do not count against a stacking limit. Both the strategy and leadership action, as well as some planning cards, allow you to move 2 or more legions on the same turn. You may not move the same legion more than once, as all legion movement is considered simultaneous. There are 2 mechanics associated with movement that allow you to move more than one space. The Atreides have sand riding, and the Harkonnen have troop transport. Let's discuss Harkonnen troop transport first. Whenever a Harkonnen player performs an action to move or attack with a legion, they can either increase its movement or the range of the attack by 1, using 1 and only 1 ornithopter in an air zone connected to the sector where the legion starts its movement. To do so, the Harkonnen player removes the ornithopter from the game board and either moves the legion or attacks with it up to 1 additional area away. The troop transport option allows a legion to move across impassable borders, areas containing enemy legions, and sandworms. The troop transport option also allows the Harkonnen to use an ornithopter to extend the range of the attack. Instead of attacking an adjacent area, they can attack a space 2 areas away. There would be no movement associated with that attack unless the Harkonnen player wins the combat and must move all units into that attacked area. Next, let's talk about Atreides sand riding. When performing a move or attack, an Atreides legion can use sandworm tokens and or sandworms to increase their movement on the board. A Atreides legion moving out of an area adjacent to a wormside token or a sandworm can move across any number of adjacent consecutive areas containing wormside tokens and or sandworms, and ending their movement in an area adjacent to one of those wormside tokens or sandworms. They could also end the movement on top of a wormside token, but not on top of a sandworm. Like the Harkonnen troop transport, sand riding can also be used to attack, using the same sand riding rules. So a Atreides legion can attack across consecutive, wormside, and or sandworms. That legion would not actually move into the area they're attacking unless they destroy the legion that is the target of the attack. At that point, all attacking units must move to the new area. Now let's talk about battles. Instead of moving with the legion during the leadership or strategy action, you can make an attack with the legion. Attacks target an adjacent area unless you use troop transport or sand riding, and the attacking legion remains in its current area for the duration of the battle. All figures in the attacking legion are involved in the battle. At the beginning of the battle, if the defending legion is in an area containing an unrevealed siege, flip the token face up to reveal its rank. Likewise, flip up any deployment tokens involved in the battle and replacing them with the corresponding units. The battle is then fought over a series of combat rounds. Starting with the attacking player, both players can discard planning cards from their hand to add 1 combat die to their combat roll for each card discarded. Both players roll a number of their combat dice equal to the number of units comprising their legion, plus the number of planning cards they discarded for that round. If the defending legion is in an area with a settlement, either a siege or a village, in each round of the battle, the defending player rolls a number of additional combat dice equal to a rank of the settlement. It's important to note that no matter what, the maximum combat dice any player can roll in a round is 6. After resolving combat, both players remove any casualties, starting with the attacking player, removing units first. It's important to remember that while leaders don't count as units to add combat dice, they can be removed as casualties taking 1 hit. The attacking player must decide whether to continue the battle. If the defending legion is in an area containing a settlement, the attacking player must take 1 additional hit in order to continue the attack. In any case, if the attacker continues, the defending player may retreat. If the defending player does not choose to retreat, a new combat round starts. Note that if the legion retreats, the opposing player moves the retreating legion to an adjacent area of their choice. The chosen area for retreating must be empty or considered free for the retreating legion and cannot contain a warm side token. If the legion is a Harkonnen and there is no such adjacent area, the defending player cannot choose to retreat. If the attacking player ceases the attack, then the battle ends and the surviving figures of both players remain in the areas where they started the battle. Let's talk about the combat roll. A sword symbol inflicts 1 hit, a shield cancels 1 opponent's hit, and the star-looking symbol, which I'll call special, may generate a variable number of swords or shields based on the leaders involved in combat. Each leader's combat abilities can only be used once per die each combat round. The presence of special elite units in the combat lowers the opponent's defenses. Immediately before removing casualties, each Sardaukar, Harkonnen special elites, or Fedaykin, the Atreides special elites, cancels 1 shield result from the opponent's combat roll. When taking casualties, regular units take 1 hit, elite units can take 1 hit and be downgraded to a regular unit, or take 2 hits. Same with special elite units. As I stated earlier, leaders could take 1 hit and be removed from the combat. If a named leader is removed in this way, they go to their faction's regeneration tank, which is on the player boards, where they move down a track each time a die is resolved by their player, returning to the deployment pool once they make it off the track. The battle ends if the attacker chooses to cease the attack, the defender chooses to retreat, or one or both legions are completely destroyed. If the defending legion retreats or is eliminated, and the attacking legion is not destroyed, the battle ends in a victory for the attacking player. If the attacking player or the attacking legion is eliminated, and the defending legion is not destroyed, the battle ends in a victory for the defending player. If both legions are destroyed, nobody wins. If the battle ends in a victory for the attacking player, the attacking legion, all units and leaders, must move into the attacked area. If the victorious legion advances into an area with a settlement, the settlement is destroyed. If the victorious Atreides legion advances into an area with a harvester, the harvester is destroyed. If a victorious Harkonnen legion advances into an area with a worm sign token, it is immediately revealed and resolved. This is a good time to talk about destroying settlements. To destroy a settlement, even when undefended, it is necessary to attack it with a legion and win the battle. If a settlement is undefended, the battle is automatically won by the attacker. No combat dice, no combat roll is required. When a siege is destroyed, the Harkonnen player immediately gains a number of supremacy points equal to the siege rank. The siege is then removed from the board. When a Harkonnen settlement is destroyed, the Atreides player immediately advances each prescience marker a number of steps equal to the settlement rank. The settlement is then removed from the game. Destroyed settlements, villages, and sieges are no longer considered to contain a settlement for any game purpose. Let's do combat examples. A Harkonnen legion consisting of 2 Harkonnen regulars, 2 elites, and 1 Sardaukar, 1 Bashar leader, generic leader, and Baron Harkonnen are attacking a Atreides legion consisting of 2 Fremen regulars, 1 Fedaykin, and Paul Muad'Dib, protecting a siege with a rank of 2. Both sides will roll a total of 5 dice for the combat. The Harkonnen player rolls 3 special icons, 2 sword, and 1 shield. The Harkonnen legion in the battle contains 2 leaders, the generic and Baron Harkonnen. The player considers 1 special as a sword and 1 as 2 shields, while the 3rd special cannot be used. Atreides rolls 5 swords. The Atreides Fedaykin is able to cancel 1 of the Harkonnen shield results. The Sardaukar doesn't have any shields to cancel. The 2 shields of the Harkonnen cancels 2 Atreides swords. The final result is Harkonnen score 3 hits and the Atreides score 3 hits. The Harkonnen player wants to retain as much aggressive power as possible, so they decide to apply 3 hits received by replacing 2 elites with 2 regulars and eliminating Baron Harkonnen, who goes to the regeneration tank. Taking 3 hits, the Atreides player is able to keep Paul on board by replacing the Fedaykin with a regular and eliminating the other 2 regulars. Now that we have fully discussed the strategy and leadership actions, let's move on to the last type of action only available to the Atreides player and called Desert Power. This does not require spending an action die to be performed, but can only be performed if the Atreides player has fewer unused action dice than the Harkonnen player, or as part of a planning card effect or a special action. The Desert Power action allows the Atreides player to either place 2 Wormstone tokens in any desert area without a worm sign, sandworm, or siege, 1 token per area, or move 2 different sandworms on the board, or attack with 1 sandworm on the board. That's a lot, so let's break down what all that means. Worm starting tokens are placed either through this desert power action or at the end of a game round on any Harkonnen harvesters or Harkonnen units that are in desert spaces. The tokens is either resolved when a Harkonnen Legion enters a space with the token or during the desert hazards phase of the game. Either way, when a token is resolved, it is flipped over to show one of 3 images. If a token has a sand image, then nothing happens. It's a false alarm. Discard the token. If a sandworm is shown on the token, then place a sandworm in that space and discard the token. If the burrowing sandworm is shown and the token is in the deep desert is any desert space on the edge of the board, then a sandworm is placed in that area and discard the token. If the space is not a deep desert space, then just discard that burrowing sandworm. If a sandworm is placed in the same area as a Harkonnen Legion via worm sign resolving, then the Legion must retreat. If the Legion cannot retreat, then the sandworm attacks the Legion. The second option with a desert power is to move 2 sandworms. Sandworms can move up to 2 desert areas when they move. The destination area they are moving cannot contain figures or tokens of any kind except for ecological testing stations. If the sandworm moves to areas, the traverse area can contain any number of tokens and or friendly figures or enemy figures. Finally, the last option you could take with a desert power action is called sandworm attack. To attack with a sandworm, the Atreides player removes this figure and may target an area up to 2 areas away. If the sandworm attacks at a distance of 2 areas, the first area must be a desert area. The target of the attack can be an enemy legion and or a harvester at any desert area, or in a case of a legion, also in a plateau or minor erg within range. Sandworms cannot attack mountain areas. If a sandworm is attacking a harvester by itself, both the sandworm and harvester are removed with no roll required. We haven't talked fully about vehicles yet, but note a carryall cannot save a harvester from a sandworm attack. If a sandworm attacks an area containing a legion, the Atreides player rolls 4 combat dice, a regular sandworm and 6 for a Wildmaker, and inflicts 1 hit on the enemy legion for each sword icon rolled and a variable number of hits for each special symbol rolled based on the terrain type of the attacked area. If the attacked area is a deep desert, a special inflicts 2 hits. If it's desert, the special inflicts 1 hit. And if it's a minor erg or plateau, a special inflicts no hits. The Harkonnen player must immediately remove any casualties if the attack eliminates all enemies units in an area containing a harvester. The harvester is also removed. Mastering the desert power action and controlling sandworms is imperative for the Atreides player to overcome the Harkonnens in Dune Battle for Arrakis. One of the last things to discuss in the actual resolution phase is playing planning cards. As we discussed earlier, the Mentat action is the main way to obtain planning action cards, but to play any planning action card, the player must spend 1 unused action die. An action die result will allow you to play a planning card. Read the card carefully and apply its effects, and then discard the card to the appropriate discard pile. One final note on action effects. Effects of an action are never mandatory. They can be carried out fully, partially, or even not at all. This is especially important for actions made possible by planning cards. For example, an action may allow you to deploy units and move a legion. A player could choose to only deploy units or only move a legion. Each name leader also has a special action associated with a specific die result. Unless that leader is in the regeneration tank, a player may use the leader's special action once per game round. When the action is available, the leader's card showing the action should be placed on the player's game dashboard. Once used for the round, pull the card off the board and flip it to only show what their special die result does during combat for the remainder of the game round. Leader cards show their enhanced or additional actions in green for the Atreides leaders, or in red for the Harkonnen leaders. Finally, there are some free actions which allow players to act without the need to spend a die or desert power action. Free actions can be played multiple times during the same turn, in addition to normal actions. Some planning or prescience cards allow for free actions, but there are 2 other ones always available. The Atreides have guerrilla training, which allow the Atreides player to reveal any number of deployment tokens on the board anytime during their action turn, and replacing the token with the corresponding units. A trades player may do this so they can split those units up for a move. Harkonnen can scout as a free action. Scouting is removing one ornithopter from the board to reveal a siege and or all deployment tokens in a single area in a connected sector of that ornithopter. Now that we have fully discussed action resolution, I want to talk about a full game round, as I think you have the necessary information to understand how a full round will proceed. At the start of the round, each player draws 2 planning cards, one from each of their decks, into their hands. Then players draw 3 cards from the President's deck and place them face up in the row next to the deck and within view of all players. Remember that the trades player can only score 2 of the 3 President's cards in any given round. Next, vehicle placement, which is conducted by the Harkonnen player. The Harkonnen player checks their position on the lowest Imperium marker on the Spice Must Flow board to see how many of their actions dice can't be used for the round and how many vehicles are available for the round. Then we go to the action resolution phase, which was covered in depth earlier in this video. The only thing to add is the trades player takes the first action during the action resolution phase. The next phase is the desert hazard phase, which is done by the trades player. They place 1 Wormside token face down in all desert areas containing a Harkonnen Legion or Harvester. Then flip all tokens and resolve them as we discussed earlier in the Worm Sign section. The second part of the phase is if there are Harkonnen Legions in Plateau, Minor Erg, or desert areas, the trades player rolls for consequences of Coriolis storms for each area. This does not include the 5 central plateau areas encircled by mountains. For each Harkonnen Legion in one of those areas, the trades player rolls 2 combat dice. A sword inflicts 1 hit on that legion, while a special inflicts a variable number of hits based on terrain. Deep Desert is 2 hits, Desert 1, and Minor Erg or Plateau, no hits. The next phase is called the Spice Harvesting phase. If there are any harvesters that survive the hazard phase, the Harkonnen player now removes them and collects spice depending on where the harvesters were located. 2 spice for any deep desert space. Again, deep desert is the space on the edge, a desert space on the edge of the game board. And 1 spice for any other desert area. The Harkonnen player immediately spends collected spice to keep the Imperial markers on the Spice Must Flow board in their current position or move them up. It costs 2 points to keep a marker at its current position, or 3 to move it up 1 step. Otherwise, the marker moves down 1 step. If the Harkonnen supremacy marker is at step 5 or lower on the track, the Harkonnen player has the option to spend 3 spice to gain 1 supremacy point. They may only do this once per spice harvest phase. Each of the 3 Imperial markers has a band associated with them. If the Imperial marker is at the bottom row of the Spice Must Flow track, then that band is active. If any number of Imperial markers move down, 1 additional Imperial band is activated. One player chooses this band from among those corresponding to the markers that move down that round. For example, we'll show the Harkonnen player has collected 4 spice. They are spent to maintain the position of the Chom and Spacing Guild, 2 spice each. The Landsrad marker goes down by 1 step, and the corresponding band is activated for the next round. The Harkonnen player may choose to save a maximum of 1 spice for the following round. This is a marker there is a marker to show that the 1 spice was carried over. The last phase of a game round is the end of the round. The trades player checks if they meet the requirements of any end of the round prescience cards. They perform any instructions found on those cards they wish to claim. And also at this point, the trades player checks to see if they meet their secret objective and win the game if they do. Otherwise, remove any ornithopters and carry-offs from the board. If either player has named leaders on the board, starting with the Harkonnen player, both players may replace any named leaders with generic ones. You may want to do this if your leader is out of position or if you have a plan for the next round. But remember, you have to deploy them again to get them on the board. Flip up, face up place back any named leaders on the corresponding action boxes, unless that leader's in the regeneration tank. Both players check their hand of planning cards and discard down to 6 if needed. You get to choose which card you discard down with. Then a new game round is started. We talked earlier about the effects of Harkonnen's Supremacy track and Prescience track when you hit certain steps. Many times you get access to new leaders or Bene Gesserit tokens, but step 8 of the Atreides presence track also grants detonation of family atomics. If you read the books or seen the movie, this represents the Atreides using atomic weapons on the planet Arrakis. Family atomics can target one of 3 locations, either splintered rock, hole in the rock, or rim wall west. Whichever location is targeted is replaced with the appropriate token and now becomes a desert space, exposing that space and adjacent spaces to sandworms and Coriolis storms. And that's how to play Dune War for Arrakis. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below.